How can you tell when is a God-willed time for you to make a transition into another season of your life? How do you know when it's time to move on from whatever it is you're doing? When can you tell that really the right move you're supposed to make is to let go? Many times we find ourselves in situations where things have come to an end, but we're not yet sure that this is the direction that God is moving us. Because God is not going to scream from the sky and tell you, my daughter, it's time to move on. My son, now let go and move on to the next thing. How can you tell that what God is trying to drive you towards is for you to let go of this and move into your next season? Me, many times I've made the mistake of tarrying too long in a season that has ended. Why? Because most times we are scared to make that transition. It's really easy to stay with what you've become comfortable with, what you know. It could be time for you to leave a certain friendship. Maybe the time for that friendship has ended. It could be time for you to leave a certain career and move into another career. It could be time to leave a certain job. One of the reasons why we find it very difficult to be able to make that transition smoothly is because of the fear of the unknown. It's because of the courage it takes to let go of what you have right now while you're not even sure of what is coming. That is one of the things that keeps us back, and it happened to me a lot, because when I cannot see where I'm moving to, I wouldn't be able to have the courage to let go. But the things of the Spirit is funny. The way God works, most times He won't show you that, okay, this is the place, until you make that move to let go. But the thing is that whenever it's time to let go, deep down in your spirit, you'll be feeling it. Things will be happening to show you. Now, these are the things we're going to be talking about in this video. What are those things that help you to know that God is saying, let go and move on? Time for the next season. Time to transition into the next. What are those things? Number one, casting your mind back to the reason why you started in the first place. Why you started this job, why you started this friendship, why you're in this relationship. Cast your mind back to the reason why you started. It sets the tone for every other thing to come into focus. If you're able to pinpoint the reason, then you ask yourself, is that reason still there? Because if the reason why you started is no longer there, then that's one clear sign that it may be time for you to move on. I used to make this mistake before. I just become friends with people just because I meet you at an event, we exchange numbers, we start talking. Hey babes, what's up? Let's hang out. Let's do this. Are you going to this side? Let's go to the market. And it took a lot of experiencing for me to realize that there has to be a reason. Why are you friends with this person? Why are you doing this particular job? Why are you living in this particular area? Most times we find ourselves doing things without actually knowing why we're doing it. We're just doing it because that's what we saw ourselves doing. It shouldn't be so. By the grace of God, I have grown to a point where I can now understand these patterns, so I'll be able to apply it into my own life. One of the things that happened to me recently concerning this is I had a friendship that I realized has reached the end of its season. I never actually thought about the reason why this friendship started. This person just started coming closer to me. I just felt probably they liked my personality, I guess that's what I thought. But then after some years, I noticed there was a strain in the friendship. There wasn't mutual respect happening anymore. So I had to trace back, what is the reason why this friendship started? It took me a while before I was able to pinpoint the fact that the reason was because I was working in a particular industry where this person was interested in going into at that time. And that was the reason why they came close to me. And for me, I thought it was a normal friendship. So when they expressed interest in getting a job in that industry where I was working, I did my best to help them get. I secured an interview. I felt I was doing something for a friend, but I didn't realize at that time, because I was working in this industry, this was the exact reason why this person came close to me in the first place. At the time when I started to notice that there was now a shift in the friendship, I was no longer working in that industry. It was almost like I was no longer useful to that person, because to the person, I was the person's contact into going into that career path. And the person probably kept coming closer to me because they needed to keep that contact. But once I left that industry, and even subconsciously, because I don't think they were doing it consciously, they realized that I was no longer in that industry, therefore there was no need for me. But I didn't get that. It took a while before I realized that, this thing I'm feeling, this shift, this attitude, is because the friendship, there was no value for the person anymore. That is why it is so important that you understand the reason why you are going into anything. So the second thing, you will notice a lot of synchronicities. It's almost like the universe is contriving to tell you something. I'll give you an example with myself. Recently, I found myself in this very stage. Like, this video is even for me. I found myself at this crossroads once again when it's time to transition to my next season. But of course, the usual fear, the usual lack of confidence, lack of courage to take that step, and I wasn't sure of a lot of things. There was so much doubt in my head. But I noticed that there was a pattern of synchronicity that was happening. Recently, I saw a video by one of my favorite YouTubers talking about letting go, talking about how he just realized it's time for him to let go. And that hit me because that is exactly what I was struggling with. So this is the synchronicities I'm talking about. You're going to find out that things will just kind of be moving towards that angle for you. You will just see, maybe just be in a conversation and just hear people talking about it. That very thing that you need to hear, somehow it will just be brought to your attention. That's the synchronicity I'm talking about. You will find yourself almost always walking into things that have to do with the next season, letting go, moving on, living. These are the kind of things. It will be coming to your attention. It's trying to tell you something. It's time to transition. The third thing I need to check is, am I still enjoying this? Like, how am I feeling concerning this? If it is a job, a particular area I'm living, a particular career path, a friendship, am I still getting value from this? You're no longer getting value from anything you're doing. You're actually not enjoying it anymore, especially when it's giving you more of misery, more of pain. There is so much quarrel, so much strife. You're always arguing, always having issues. If it's at work, it's not working out, you're not making progress, it's maybe time for you to move on. Because what a lot of people do when they find themselves in those situations, they start quarreling, they start fighting it out, struggling, trying to prove themselves. You may not need to do that. It might be time for you to transition into something else, something better. I'll give you an example. I was once living in an apartment, and at first when I got this apartment, it was cool. Like 3 months down the line, strange things started to happen. I never found peace in that house. It was funny because every other person seemed to be enjoying the apartment. It was a nice apartment, but I never seemed to find peace there. The apartment I took was towards the back. The generator house, which was in front, had a problem. They moved all the generators to the back, closer to my own apartment. So when everybody put on their generator, the noise was unbearable for me. The fumes was unbearable for me. As if that was not enough, the water always kept running out in my own apartment. Everybody else will have water, my own water will not be running. Sometimes there will be light issues in my own apartment where everybody else will have light, but I won't have. It was as if the house itself was trying to chase me away. I couldn't enjoy this house more. One day I came back from work and the ceiling of this house fell. Like, can you imagine it? The ceiling fell. Okay, at some point I started to fall sick often because of the generator fumes I was breathing in often in that apartment. I found myself going to hospital often. It was a mess. The house was literally pushing me away. Because I couldn't understand then. I didn't know how to know when it's time to move on. I kept trying my best to prove that no, I must enjoy this house. I've paid so much money for it. I just rented it. I must enjoy myself. I didn't understand the language then. I didn't understand how to hear from God, from the things around you. I didn't understand it then. I got to a point I had to it's time for me to leave this house. Once I decided to call up an agent and start looking for another apartment, everything just played out beautifully. That was when I got it, oh, I wasn't supposed to live in this apartment. Because now when I look back, I realized there weren't a lot of good people around there. My spiritual life was suffering a lot in that apartment. It was almost like God wanted me to leave that area, but I wasn't getting the language then. It wasn't really clear. So I tarried a lot, suffering unnecessarily. If only I had known how to know when it's time to leave. And the moment I made that decision, that was when I was brought to the fourth thing that I'm going to tell you about now. That is, if you feel instant joy at the thought of leaving, when you think about leaving, you feel instant peace, you feel relief, you feel happy. You are scared to do it, quite all right, but you're happy for it to happen. It may be a sign that it's time for you to transition. It may be time for you to leave. That brings us to number 5. Immediately you make that move, it looks like everything is immediately open. All of a sudden you can now see that thing you're supposed to transition into that you couldn't see before, because that's how the things of the Lord works. He would never show you the next step until you take a step. That is when you will see the next season that is waiting for you. If you make a move and all of a sudden you see the next step, that is a sign that you are supposed to go with that next step, move on to the next stage. So with this information, as a reawakened spirit, you're living consciously in your everyday life. Pay attention to everything that's happening around you. God talks to us through everything around us. It's not going to speak out of the sky. Take a look at everything that is going on within you. What is it in your life that you may need to transition from? Whatever it is, be it a relationship, a friendship, a job, career, an apartment, whatever. Don't tarry in a season that is already over. Once you apply these 5 steps and you are able to gather the courage and make a step, you will be surprised how God will open the way for you to transition into your next season.